I'll go. Governor, could you talk a little bit more about the sideboards, particularly around accountability that you want to see with the school choice money that you already?
Well, I mean, I thought it was pretty, I did listen, I only listened to bits and pieces of it. Actually, I reached out to Governor Ducey, but he was already headed back to his plane. But, you know, I think, you know, what we talked about and even what Wendy talked about a little bit this morning, Representative Horman, when she was down here, that's, you know, that, to me, it's a little hypocritical for me to demand accountability for public schools and then give money to somebody else that doesn't have any accountability. I mean, it's just a credibility issue. If I want to, I'm all in for local control, but if I want some kind of a, whether it's a charter school or whether it's a public school, some kind of a performance metrics on reading or ISAT or fill in the blank, including attendance, and it's to say, we're going to make this body meet these accountability standards, the other one not, I just can't do that, so.
So it would have to be some kind of testing benchmark.
Yeah, the hard part about doing testing is these kids are so different. We always, for me, it was always growth. You got to measure growth. So, you know, because I represent a lot of school districts. Some of them were really good school districts. Other ones had a huge amount of English language learners, and so you can't hold the same standard. But with all the technology we got and longitudinal data systems, we ought to be able to measure growth, and there ought to be some growth there, and they ought to be learning. So that's, but I think we have too much in the code books right now in education. I know most of my legislators think we ought to take some of that out of there. I would love to go from one end to the other of the education code and take some things out of there, but I still want fundamental accountability. These kids got to learn to read. I increased 700% the amount of money going into literacy. We're moving on literacy, but we're not moving at the rate that I'm happy with. And I know for a fact my state board feels the same way, as does Debbie.
Sorry, last follow-up. So if they do not meet the accountability guidelines, you know, that you want to see in that bill, do you feel like those schools that are receiving that subsidy through the families, whatever mechanism it happens to be, should they no longer get?
Well, the devil's in the details. But they better start, or I really recommending, you know, it's all of a sudden it's out of my hands, it's in their hands, but they'll, you know, we always have a good dialogue with, and Senator Denton Hartog, Representative Horman, the people that are involved in this, we've been having discussions with them, so they know where we are. Scott?
Vouchers. So are you open to the idea of a refundable tax credit, as Speaker Moyle brought up?
Well, if you look at the budget, it's in the tax side of the budget. That's, and I know that the speaker, that's his, he loves these big tax bills, and that's, so I assume it's going to be in there somewhere. The nice thing about having the tax side is we know who people are. We saw that during the pandemic. If there were programs, and if it went through the tax commission, you know, and a lot of it's because of our big, most everybody's in the system in Idaho because of our grocery tax credit. People that would normally never pay any taxes file to pay their taxes in Idaho because there's that grocery tax refund. So it's a way to kind of know where things are. And if there's a few outliers, we can take care of them. But that's one of the reasons to do it in tax, is because then we can minimize fraud. So.
I guess I was putting the emphasis on refundable tax credit as opposed to just a straight tax credit. Are you
Well, of course, there's a tax credit, and then there's a refundable tax credit, and then there's a transferable tax credit. And each one of them have a different impact on, but generally, they'll all be administered through the tax commission, so. And either the state board or the State Department of Education, so.
So no concerns with refundable tax tax credit?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the, it's always, show me the spreadsheet. Right?
Governor, can you talk about the decision to tie teacher raises to CEC this go around with the career ladder expiring?
Well, I think you answered your own question. The career ladder expired, and we needed to do something, and so that was, and because of what we've done, like particularly on the benefit side, the fact that healthcare benefits, and there's some issues in there, are the same, tying it to CEC makes sense, so.
Do you see that as a long-term solution?
Well, we'll have a dialogue with our legislative partners on how to do that, so. I don't know of any real downside of it. Heather Ann?
Why did you feel like now was the best time to expand school choice?
Well, I mean, empowering parents is literally, was a step. I mean, you can talk to the legislators. I think there's probably critical mass. There's critical mass to do something, but there isn't critical mass on agreement on any one thing, and that's been the issue the last couple of years. And I obviously, and I spelled them out just a minute ago, want some things in it. I can't get them in it if I'm not part of the discussion. So I think something's going to happen. And we did great work on charter schools last year. What we did to deregulate it and emphasize on the charter schools that were having struggles. And so this would be the next logical step.
Governor, on Friday, you echoed comments you've made in the past about if a grocery tax repeal makes it to your desk, you'd sign it. You said there were kind of some qualifications on that. What would you like to see out of a grocery tax bill, and how do you weigh eliminating the grocery tax, eliminating the credit, keeping one versus the other? There's a lot of
Well, you're doing a
options.
pretty good job of identifying them. I don't know why you asked me the question, but I'll just make fun of you, Logan. And the other thing is, what are groceries? What happens? What do you do for a small grocer? What do we do for sundries? What do we do for, most people just get their bill from the grocery store and look at the total and look at the tax and say, that is not going to, I don't think under any scenario, because otherwise people will buy all their major appliances at Walmart and go through the grocery line instead of the other line. So those are all things that need to be discussed. And of course, it depends upon your family size too. You raise credit up, it will be a net negative to many families. Yes.
You proposed something like 850,000 for medical residency in Idaho. Can you talk a little bit about that? And how many residencies would you expect that to cover?
Well, I think we're just following the recommendation from our residency, the committee that's making recommendations. Where we put them in the state, we've been funding a lot more in the behavioral health field, professionals in that area. That's a change from what it's been. Behavioral Health Council's been making recommendations to us, so I think I just, whatever their recommendation is, there's some areas where they really don't have room. The hospitals are filled up. So you got to put residents where there's room to where they can have a good, rewarding experience, and most importantly, where they'll stay. And so I think we're just their recommendation. I don't think we left, we might have dialed it back or dialed it up a little bit. We didn't leave their recommendations because it's been working. Yes.
It's the anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Today's January 6th, you're right.
I wondered if you'd like to comment on that event, and then in particular also, incoming President Trump has said he'd like to pardon people who were charged on that day. I wondered if,
That's way above my pay grade.
would you like to see Idahoans who were charged that day pardoned?
If somebody has somebody comes through our process, which is our state pardons and parole, those are the ones that I look at. At the federal level, there's a lot of things that happen in the federal government that I got a lot of other things I'm working on, and that's not one of them. Yes.
Hi,
supportive of Trump's immigration policies, which include deporting people who are unauthorized to be here. What does that mean for Idaho's agricultural workforce, including the dairy industry, farm workers? Are there plans to supplement that workforce if there are to be deportations in those industries?
Well, and I stated it just a few minutes ago, obviously, and I've been pretty interested in this for literally my whole adult life. And, you know, most people who are concerned, the most thing they're concerned about are nefarious people that are here. People that are on the terrorist watch list that are getting across, criminals are coming across. We've already seen, I'll say it and probably get chastised for it. We've already seen some mixed signals about exactly, there's some people in the administration said every single person that doesn't have a passport or a green card or a proof of American citizenship is leaving. We already know what he's doing on H-1B. We already have an H-2A program that is widely used in Idaho. And I think those are, but all of his immigration, whether it's Homeland Security, whether it's the other people have all said, we're going to go after the dangerous criminals first, and we're here to help them on that side. Yes?
Follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. Last year you recommended $200,000 to send ISP troopers to the border. Do you expect using this more or less of those same funds? And if so, are you considering possibly sending the Idaho National Guard to the border?
Well, you know, our Idaho National Guard is different than some other states. The people in our Idaho National Guard are pilots and mechanics and tank operators. Other states, part of their National Guard has a much higher percent of law enforcement type trained people. For the same amount of money that I'd take a pilot or a tank operator and train up to do law enforcement at the border, and this is paid for by the federal government, it would be more effective and more efficient and better if it was somebody that was in that area. So I would be surprised. We've been asked, and we have agreed to call outs before for certain events, but they know that that's not what we have in Idaho. That's not what my National Guard, our Idaho National Guard, that's not their assignment. That's not the 122nd, that's not the 399th, that's not all of those. They have a different role. So I would be doubtful. Now, there's some states that they might do that. I mean, some states have a big fleet of C-130s that they can move people back and forth. I can't get very many people in a Black Hawk helicopter or an A-10. So I doubt that we get called. Now, as far as the state police, it's the same thing. They have to do this efficiently. I mean, there's only so many dollars to do all these jobs. You know, my state police are absolutely incredible at doing drug interdiction, and if they ask us to go back down there to help on that, we'll do it because we get the added benefit of what they do when they come back. Those three gentlemen that I just introduced upstairs, now they're the experts that are helping city police, county sheriffs, their fellow troopers on what we do in drug interdiction. If we get asked to do that and it works without jeopardizing the safety of Idahoans, I will do it. So.
You said that there have been some mixed messages regarding what efforts at targeting undocumented residents might look like. With that in mind, what guidance, if any, are you giving to the state agencies who might have regular touch points with undocumented people living in Idaho? We haven't. Their job's to do their job to follow the law, and that's what we're doing right now. Is they're following the laws that are here. You know, the issue. I was in the Senate when we passed the legislation about if you're not a resident of Idaho, you can't get any Idaho benefits. That's state law already. Now, what I assume will happen is some of the criteria and the mandates on Medicaid and probably even Medicare, but particularly in Medicaid, there'll be a change there, and we'll just have to see that when it shows up here. So.
Perpetua Resources just got its federal permit for the Stibnite mine. Do you have a position on that mine? Would you like to see that mine go forward?
Well, this country desperately needs strategic minerals. As a matter of fact, Governor Burgum, soon to be Secretary Burgum, and I have had through the Western governors about what we need to do to have a national security from a strategic mineral. And a lot of the strategic minerals are in Idaho, whether it's cobalt, whether it's antimony, whether it's some of the rare earths. There's no question that at a minimum, we need to smooth the regulatory hurdles for them to get through. We still want to protect our water quality, our wildlife, and our air quality, but we can do both. When you have to spend 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars just to get the permit done, I don't think there's anybody other than people that just want to stop everything that think that's a good idea. I'd much rather spend that 30 or 40 million dollars making sure the water quality projects are better, making sure the air quality, making sure the wildlife, make sure fish passage is better. But right now, we're just giving it to lawyers and permit writers.
How are you hoping to see the state permitting reforms that you mentioned in your speech happen? In your budget, I believe there's funding for reforming mining permits at the state level.
Oh, well, because there is 850,000, I think. We know there's projects in Idaho that and you'll also see it, I guess my budget's out now, it's not a state secret, the DEQ, that my engineers at DEQ that approve water quality permits, air quality permits, that they tend to get hired away by everybody else. So we're putting money in to upgrade their salaries so we can retain them and to help them get their pipeline cleared out so we can get these projects done. That is not in Brad Little's DNA that we want to have a bureaucratic system that slows down progress. And like I said, we want to do it right. We want to keep our water clean and our air clean and wildlife protected. We also don't want to be in a position to where we're not getting the work done we need to get done critical. Yes, sir.
Is there a round number for illegal aliens in Idaho?
For what?
Illegal aliens, a round number in Idaho?
I don't, there probably is, but it's all, some of it's people that have overstayed their visas. Now there's a whole new, and Idaho doesn't have as many of them, but there's a whole new class of people that ask for asylum status. Those are some of the things that are going to have to be sorted out. And I know I've heard that they are going to really up the number of immigration judges to address these. So that I don't know of a number because there's student visas that have been overstayed. There's people that have come here, and that's all federal law. You can come into this country and apply for asylum. Unless Congress changes the law, they may want to do something, but it'll probably get litigated. So there's a lot of to be addressed, but we do know that those criminals, and I advocated for 30 years ago an agreement with Mexico to where we don't have to keep those nefarious, particularly the dangerous criminals, that we send them back there right away. But we'd have to do an extradition agreement with Mexico or Venezuela or El Salvador or whatever that country is. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I do believe that President Trump, because this is really his signature, that a lot of those hurdles out there, and they're going to jump on this early. We're going to be real involved in that. The states will, the governors will, but it's really a congressional issue because immigration is a federal issue, not a state issue. James?
Can you talk a little bit about the 5% CEC for teachers specifically, given that ISAT scores have still been below 5 years ago, even with these new goals that were put into place last fall? barely exceeding those.
And it's all over the place. You know, when I do my education walkthrough, we know there's districts where they're making great progress. We know there's other districts. Superintendent Critchfield and I, the State Board of Education, obviously the stakeholders, the superintendents, the trustees, we want to get down, roll up our sleeves and address part of these issues. You know, we've gone long enough now, we can quit blaming everything on COVID, even though if you're at a certain age in life and you get way behind, as took place there, but we put extra money in to those communities to try and help those kids get caught back up. But now we got to be looking forward. And the state board and I and Debbie and I believe legislative leadership, we're all in tune. We want to make the school district, you know, best example is charter schools. The legislation we passed last year, charter schools were doing fine. We said, have at it. We'll come back and check on you in 3 or 4 years. The charter schools are having a problem. We're going to dump a lot of resources into helping you get caught up. I would say that's what we need to do on public schools.
Even though they've been behind for 5 years and they lowered these.
Some of it's the demographics, but some of it is leadership in the districts. Yes, sir.
You're recommending another $37 million for the State Public Defender's Office, in part to shore up staffing shortages. Could you help us understand how the additional funds would help with that, and if the additional funds and the help from it would be enough to stop court intervention after the ACLU's lawsuit?
I'm looking at my staff. When something like this happens, I always go, how did this happen? And, you know, all the good estimates is the money that we put into it, and including the counties. Everybody says, yeah, this ought to do it, this ought to do it. And then we got there and they said, no, I don't, I want to get paid the same thing doing public defense in Sun Valley as the public defender gets in Du Bois or somewhere else where they can buy. And so Eric tried to make that to where it, you know, and of course some of the public defenders got a cut in pay. And as you can imagine, because there's not that many of them, they said, no, we want to keep getting in the top 5% pay, and even though we're raising up those people at the bottom a lot, that's not good enough. So we're going to put money into the budget proposal that I sent up this morning. We're going to put money in there to fix it for right now, but it really, and I've talked to legislative leadership, we need to make sure this is right. We can't do anything about it. And I think it's the right thing to do, we need to equalize it to where if you're a citizen of Idaho and you get convicted or you get arrested, that you have a good public defense. And with that goal, then we got to make sure we're doing it. But it is going to be a windfall in some areas and a detriment in others. But we'll work with our legislative partners because we'll probably have to change the code, so. Ryan?
Kevin's on TV, so I have to ask a launch question for him. We talked a bit about this $25 million for workforce training. Like, what do you hope to accomplish with it? And then some of this money says it'll be matched by the private sector.
There's one time and ongoing. The one time is build capacity. If I need capacity, you know, some of the biggest in-demand jobs, welders, auto technicians, some of the more advanced nursing, we're going to build capacity mainly at our community colleges to build capacity. The match is for if you're a hospital or if you're a manufacturer or whatever you are, because we're helping them with their workforce, we'll say, we'll do it, but you put some cash up and we'll match that cash to build capacity. They're both capacity. One of them's one-time capacity, one of them's ongoing capacity.
Do you have any guarantees at this point that you'll get?
Yes, to a certain extent. We know there are people out there that'll, you know, we're doing their workforce training for them. Believe me, and if there's no match, there's no money, so.
I'm confident there will be the money, yes.
On Friday, Speaker Moyle talked about the Luma business system and some of the troubles that have been going on there, and he expressed real doubt in the state's ability to account for its money. Do you share that
No.
concern? Are you sure that the budget that you've proposed here is accurate and
Yes.
the state knows how much it has?
Every big organization leader, whether they be a public institution or whether they be a large business, when you do a wholesale change, particularly when you let your program get so far behind, the number of them that are implemented flawlessly is about that big. And the bumps are maybe a little bigger than we anticipated. We know where the money is. Sometimes the timing of knowing where the money is because when the first stories started coming up about it, I went to my budget people and I says, the money there, says, yeah, it's there, but it hasn't gone through the system to be accounted for. It's going to be a better system when we get there, but I knew there were going to be challenges. There's still challenges, but and the other thing is, what's the alternative? We can't go back. The other system's gone. Otherwise, we have to go out and bid for a whole new project, put another $120 million into it. That is not going to happen. We're going to fix this one. And see, we're kind of the beta test model, which I was worried about, that we were the beta test model for this particular system. But on the other hand, they want to sell more of them. They want to fix it for Idaho because they want to sell more of this product in other states. So I think that is going to help us. But it's really a timing issue, which is frustrating. But I don't think some of our budget submissions, and I had something the other day that was a little bit of a Luma issue, but I mean, compared to the other system that the wheels were starting to come off of it, this is a lesser problem. So.
We have time for 2 more questions.
All right.
Scott and Heather Ann.
Okay.
How much of your budget relies on federal dollars, and how concerned are you, especially given some of the projects that you outlined today and promised, how concerned are you that Idaho's going to get doged?
I will tell you the exact same thing I told all my directors when I met with them this morning. Some of that's going to happen. I mean, but I will tell you also that in my conversations with other governors, you're going to be in better shape in Idaho than you are in the other states because of what we've done to build up our rainy day funds, what we've done to basically streamline, what we're doing with growth. The front page of Wall Street Journal today, Idaho's the top 1 state for, if you've got velocity in your economy, something happens to some of the programs there, you're in way better shape than if you've got a declining velocity in your economy. So, it depends upon it depends upon where you look. And it depends on what the program is. Obviously, 2/3 of the state's federal land, there's a lot of that there. Every year it gets less because our FMAC goes up because our personal incomes are the fastest growing in the nation. So, but I'm not losing any sleep over that because I know that out of the 50 states, we're going to probably be one of the least impacted, and other states are going to be more impacted, and Congress is going to have to act on a lot of those things. Heather Ann.
I was going to give you a hard time about the cow comment, but instead, we're going to talk about just.
Do you know what a cattle guard is?
No.
Well, that's why I said I'd explain it to you later.
All I heard was Californians, and I want to talk about the theme. Just kind of how you have a theme for each state of the state and what this one means to you.
Well, it's not a radical change. Continued investments in workforce training, continued investments in education, continued investments in transportation, continued investments in families. Probably one of the things that I left out, the most important, is what we're doing in the foster area, which is huge. But, families, children, the workforce, water, resources, all those things we're investing in, and we're going to keep those promises, and those are collective promises between me and my legislative partners. So, thanks, everybody.